All right, on to Texas. Charlie Strong's taken over for Mac, and they're a little bit of a team in transition. They came up against they scheduled two tough opponents early in the year, two non-conference opponents in both BYU and UCLA, and ended up losing two tough games there. It all starts with their defense. They're stout on defense. There isn't really a glaring weakness. I could talk about, the 11 guys, and I could talk about several of the backups too. They're 18th in turnovers, 6th in sacks, but they have just some dynamic players. Jordan Hicks has been around there for a long time, been injured, off and on a lot in his career, but he's healthy and, making multiple tackles at will linebacker. I could talk about Diggs on the other side right there, but I just figured I'd just accent a couple of people. Malcolm Brown, I think, is one of the best players that I've seen, period. He's big, he's aggressive, he's nasty, he moves well, makes several tackles for loss. He's every bit of 3 1/4 and probably runs 4.7. He'll be a high draft choice, and he's a very, very disruptive player. Cedric Reed's been around for a while. He's where Malcolm Brown is the dynamic inside player. That's what Cedric does on the outside at defensive end. I think they're very, very good on defense. They play both 4 down and 3 down. They're probably in 4 down defenses about 80% of the time, and in an odd defense about 20% of the time. So you have to get ready for both of those. They mix it up. They pressure a lot, probably half the time. They pressure. They like to play man coverage a lot, play post safety. You'll probably see that, 90% of the time. They're physical and they're fast. On offense, their biggest issue is offensive line going through transition. They've had multiple guys suspended or dismissed from the team, or just transfer and no longer be there. It's a totally different line than we've seen from Texas the last couple of years, and I think they're just trying to get settled in at that position. I feel their pain. Swoops has taken over for Ash. First of all, Ash was a really good player, and I'm glad he made the decision to stop playing. Not because we're playing him, because concussions, or something that could affect your life even more down the road. So Swoops is in. He's very, very big. They list him at 6'4", 243. On tape, he looks bigger than that. When I look at him, he just looks bigger than that. I'll wait till I see him in person, but he's a big man. He has a very, very strong arm, and he's mobile. The two running backs, it really doesn't make a difference. They can play Bergeron too, but really, Brown and Gray handle most of the carries. They're almost identical. They're about 5'11", 220, physical, bruising backs. Wide receivers, I think it's a requirement at Texas for a Shipley to be at wide receiver. I don't know how many more kids are left in the family, but they're going to have kids, so that there could be another Shipley there. But just like his brother, just good route runner, usually gets open, catches the ball, along with Harrison Johnson as the other two. They had a big tight end, Swaim, 6'4", 250, who's probably one of the better blocking tight ends I've seen. And I've just recently, read earlier today that, Greg Daniels might be back and playing. He hasn't played yet this year, coming off a scope, which would give him another big bruising tight end. So I think that we can expect some physical play out of their tight end position. They have two solid kickers. Russ, their punter, averages just under 44 yards a punt. He's also their holder as well. Their kicker, Rose, he kicks off. He's got, I'd say about 2 out of every 3 kickoffs is a touchback. Now he is having, here's another one that sounds familiar. He has a strong leg, but he's 50% on his field goals this year. I think they'll use Shipley back there in punt returns. They've put Quandary Diggs back there a little bit, but I haven't seen him return one yet. And then when you go to the kickoff returns, it's Jackson. Obviously this is a big week for our program. 25% of our kids are from the state of Texas. It's homecoming. I'm sure there's nothing earth-shattering that Texas is looking at from as they sit there and study us. They're coming off a bye week, and we're going to have to play. We're going to have to play really, really well to have a chance.
The last 2 years, I mean, you had them on the ropes here. You mentioned that yesterday, and then last year in it, right there until the third quarter drive to make it a 1-score game. What's been the difference that has kept you guys from actually getting over the top and instead of just being competitive against Texas?
Well, I think that our defense believes that if a team is just going to try to line up and try to get into a slugfest, I think they're willing to play that game. Well, it starts with our defense. I think offensively, we probably did enough 2 years ago, even though we didn't do a lot. We probably did enough to have it, give us a chance to win. Last year, we just didn't do anything, and really didn't help the defense out at all. We are not gonna go wild or anything like that. We're gonna figure to try to play into a slugfest and win the game in the fourth quarter.
Charlie, you mentioned the transition that Texas is in right now. When you look at them on film, do they look like a different Texas? Is there a lot of differences between what they've done in the past?
Well, I think with all these guys that have been suspended or dismissed, it's hurt their depth. They're very talented, but like at the offensive line, when you take your 2 starting tackles and they're gone, it's a big difference when they're not out there. And I don't know when the suspensions are over for a couple of those guys, but I'm glad it's not this week. The center, who was one of their best players, got injured. He's gone for the year. So we don't even talk about him. Espinosa, he's gone. So they're going, and then 2 of the receivers, one is suspended. I'm not sure the 2 fastest receivers, they're not playing. So when you look at that, even though they got tons of talented people, when you take that many people away, now your whole depth of your whole team definitely gets affected.
You've been through this, I guess, here where you come in and you want to set a culture. Is that difficult though, when in the short term or in the long term it's the right move, but in the short term maybe it's going to hurt you a little bit?
I think it's the right move. I think that the difference is it's always tough to follow a legend. When you go to Texas, following Mack Brown, what do? We're going to come in and say, here's all the things Mack Brown was doing wrong? I mean, it's kind of tough to do that. So I think that Charlie's doing it his way, and I think he feels comfortable doing it his way. And I believe that he believes that, that that's the only way to get it done the way he wants to get it done. I was in a different situation. I came into a team that had won one game. He's coming into a team that goes to a bowl, wins 8 every year at least. So it's a little different situation.
You're friends with Mack Brown, and he has insight into these players. Would you feel comfortable calling him, trying to get him to share that insight, or would his loyalties?
I had a couple of humorous texts with Max this week on that subject, but I think that it's important. I just think it's important to not put somebody, like I wouldn't make that call, everyone would think I should, but I would not make that call. Now, I gladly would take his call, okay, but I wouldn't make that call because I think that you're putting somebody on the spot and you're asking them to do something that, an uncomfortable situation. But, you know, if he wants to call me, he has my cell phone. I'll gladly take that one. No. He'll call me after the game. Well, either way, he'll call me after the game. You know, he's a media guy now. You know, he gets to sit in the studio.
Any update on your offensive linemen that were out last week?
No, I know that Damon is doing a couple of tests at 1:00 today. So I don't know what that's going to be. And then Smithburg is seeing the doctor tomorrow. We could have neither. We could have one, and we could have both. I mean, so I'm not stating the obvious. I really don't know the answers. I'm really not sure. But I would hope to have at least one of them back, because I think that if I had one of them back, I would probably play them at right guard and keep Larry at right tackle. If I had both of them back, they would both start at right guard and right tackle.
These changes that are on here, is that a reflection of those injuries, or is there something more here? I mean, obviously Bragg now on the depth chart.
Well, I mean, see, remember I told you last week about guys being sick?
Right.
Well, Joe's been one of those guys who's been sick. He hasn't practiced in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
So when a guy's been sick, you have to get somebody else ready to go. Now, to be honest with you, the first center I would go to in the game was probably Brian Peters, because he can play all 5 positions. You know, he's the one guy we have that's the jack of all trades, one guy. But, you know, we are getting Bragg ready to go, because if we need to, you know, make a move, or if, you know, we get somebody banged up, he's got to be ready to play.
Charlie, you got Montel some confidence last week. What's the next step you'd like to see from him this week?
Well, he's going to go against a lot better defense this week than he went against last week. So it's a different set of encyclopedias this week, because last week the whole game was too high. You know, with the exception of a handful of just sellout blitzes, everything were too high safeties. This week, the whole game is 1 high. So it's either going to be cover 1 or cover 3 on every snap. So now it's a different, you know, you're looking at different areas of the field now than you were looking at last week. For example, those bubbles that you threw last week, well, usually they have a guy up on those bubbles. So this week, you know, those easy throws, you know, there won't be as many of them as there were last week. So, you know, I think we have some good answers to that, but we'll have to see how it plays out.
Quarterbacks with a good pocket presence have seen him step in every direction to avoid a rush. The guy last week, when Bolton almost got him, he stepped aside. You see, but it seems like Montel always steps back. Is that accurate, do you think? Or?
I think that teaching pocket presence is, first of all, teaching pocket presence is very teachable. I mean, it's something that can be taught. Whereas there's a lot of things with a quarterback, they have to come natural. I mean, you can teach them how to step up, slide backwards, slide forward, shuffle. You can actually teach that. I think that, you know, over time, I think he'll become much better at that. Just like when you bail out, always going to the same side. That's another thing that it's a natural reaction that people have. But I think teaching how to move in the pocket, not from the pocket, is something that can be improved over time.
So it's not just the instinct of hearing the footsteps or...
Oh, no, I think what he's trying to do is let his legs take over. You know, because when you take your first step back, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get to the perimeter where you could make something out of the play. I don't think that the pressure really has too much to do with why you step back. I think he's trying to get to the edge. That's why he does that.
He doesn't look very natural running the option and pitching and stuff like that.
Well, we're gonna work on that too. I mean, we ran it twice last week. ran the option twice last week, and the quarterback-back relationship wasn't good on either play, and both plays, had a chance if everything was run the right way. So we'll be spending a little bit more time on that.
Did
This
you do
way.
much of that in high school or almost none?
No,
Yeah. So it's all new.
yeah, but so there's a lot of things that are new. I mean, he's perfectly capable of doing that.